I have filed a great many monitoring reports in my 11 years aboard Annex Station Verath-Kelm. Equipment failures, atmospheric fluctuations, one containment breach involving a specimen of Vithrak coral that turned out, embarrassingly, to be alive. I have filed reports in triplicate, reports under seal, reports that were immediately classified by authorities 2 tiers above my pay grade. I am not, by any reasonable standard, a man who is easily rattled. I want that on record before I describe what happened on the 43rd day of the human researcher's residency. Her name was Davin Cole. She had been assigned to our station under the Cooperative's bilateral exchange program, 12 weeks, observational access to our deep field spectrographic array, mutual research courtesies, the usual arrangement. She was not a soldier. She was not a test subject. She was a mid-career astrophysicist with ink stains on her left cuff and a habit of eating her meals at her workstation rather than in the common bay, which our station physician Halleck Dorn had flagged in week 1 as a minor behavioral irregularity. We had added it to her file. We had noted 17 such irregularities by week 6. In retrospect, the file was not large enough. Cycle 7 of her residency began without incident. She worked 11 hours at the array, produced 3 pages of annotated data, and retired to her bunk compartment at the station's 22nd hour. My second monitor, HFY, was on duty. I was in the adjacent room, doing nothing more dramatic than reviewing calibration logs, when HFY opened my door without knocking. He did not do that. In 4 years of shared shifts, HFY had never once opened a door without signaling first. I looked up. He said, her cardiac output just dropped by 31%. I was at the monitoring console in under a minute. The readout was unambiguous. Davin Cole's cardiac rhythm had slowed markedly. Her respiratory rate had halved. Her core body temperature had dropped by just under 1 degree. Her cortisol index, the standard measure of systemic arousal we used for all bilateral residents, was falling in a clean downward slope toward what our instruments categorized, in blunt clinical shorthand, as pre-cessation minimum. I called Halleck Dorn. He arrived in 4 minutes, reviewed the readout for approximately 30 seconds and said, "She's dying." I asked him to be more specific. He said, "Her body is shutting down non-essential systems. This is what a Vithrak organism looks like in the early stages of metabolic collapse. This is what a Sulhari looks like when they have been exposed to low-pressure cycling for too long. I don't know what it looks like in a human, but I know what it looks like when a biological system is losing the fight." I asked him what we should do. He said, "Open the compartment, wake her, get her to medical, do it now." I sent the wake signal to her compartment's environmental system, a gentle tone, the kind we used for all residents, calibrated to be noticeable without being alarming. We watched the readout. Nothing changed. Her cardiac output continued its slow, steady decline. I sent the secondary signal, louder, still nothing. And then, and I want to be precise about the timing, because it matters, the hull pressure alarm activated. Annex Station Verath-Kelm is an old station. Its pressure cycling system runs maintenance sequences on a schedule I could recite from memory, and the alarm that accompanies a routine low-pressure test is, by any objective standard, loud. It runs at 112 decibels in the residential corridor. It is accompanied by a strobing amber light that activates in every compartment. It lasts, typically, between 40 minutes and 2 hours, depending on which section of the outer hull is being tested. It is the single most disruptive recurring event on this station, and every species that has ever served a residency here has complained about it formally and in writing within their first 2 weeks. Davin Cole's vitals did not change. The alarm ran. The amber light strobed. Her cardiac output continued its slow, unhurried descent. Her cortisol index reached what Halleck classified, after a moment of quiet study, as a reading he had never personally observed in a living organism. He said, "This should not be possible." I said she should be awake. Asarev said she should be in medical. We sent the emergency wake signal. This was the loud one, designed not for comfort but for compliance, the kind of tone that produced immediate physiological response in every registered species in our database. Halleck monitored her vitals as it ran. Her respiratory rate dipped slightly, then stabilized. Her cardiac output continued its decline. Halleck said very quietly, "I am going to look something up." He was gone for 40 minutes. When he returned, he had a tablet in his hand and an expression I did not know how to read. He had accessed the cooperative's full cross-species biological archive, 1,100 registered species, every documented physiological baseline, and run a search for any organism capable of suppressing a cortisol stress response to the degree we were observing. He said, "There are 6 entries. All of them are either extinct or describe a medically induced state requiring external pharmaceutical intervention. None of them are spontaneous. None of them are voluntary." I said, "She's not dead." He said, "No, her brain activity is its present. It's cycling in a pattern I don't recognize from the human baseline documentation they sent us. It's not cessation. It's something else." Asarev said, "What else?" Halleck did not answer immediately. He studied the readout for a long time. The hull pressure alarm ran its second cycle in the corridor outside. The amber light strobed. Somewhere in her bunk compartment, 43 meters from where we were standing, Davin Cole's body continued doing whatever it was doing, undisturbed. At the 3rd hour, her temperature stabilized. At the 4th hour, her brain activity shifted. Halleck noted it without speaking, just touched the screen to flag the timestamp. At the 5th hour, Asarev went to get something to eat and came back with food for all of us, which I thought was either a very practical or a very strange response to the situation. We ate. The readout ran. At the 6th hour, Halleck said, "I think I know what this is." I waited. He said, "The human pre-residency documentation includes a section on something they call sleep, not a sedated state, not a medically managed recovery period, a voluntary, recurring, self-initiated physiological cycle in which the organism substantially reduces systemic arousal, drops core temperature, slows cardiovascular output, and engages a form of neurological consolidation. They do it every cycle, for what appears to be multiple hours at a time, unassisted. Without equipment." I said, "They do that deliberately." He said, "Apparently." I said, "In the middle of the alarm." He said, "It appears the alarm was not a significant variable." We all looked at the readout for a while. At the 6th hour and 17 minutes, Davin Cole's cardiac output began to rise. Her respiratory rate climbed. Her core temperature recovered. Her cortisol index did not rise. It stayed flat for another 11 minutes, then began a slow, steady climb that Halleck described as re-engagement of baseline arousal systems. Her brain activity shifted a second time, back toward the pattern documented in the pre-residency file. At the 6th hour and 41 minutes, her compartment door opened. She walked into the monitoring corridor in the clothes she had been wearing the previous shift, the ones with the ink stain on the left cuff, and she looked at the 3 of us standing at the console with our food containers still in front of us, and she said, "Is there coffee? The machine in my room isn't working." I filed my report that night. I did not classify it as a medical incident because nothing medical had occurred. I did not classify it as an equipment malfunction because our equipment had performed exactly as designed. I filed it under a category I had to create for the purpose, which the station's administrative system initially rejected because it did not correspond to any recognized event type in the emergency response taxonomy. I described the event as follows. The subject had entered, spontaneously and without assistance, a full voluntary recovery cycle lasting 6 hours and 41 minutes, during which her physiological responses to standard environmental stressors, including a 112 decibel pressure alarm, a continuous strobe light, and 3 escalating electronic wake signals, had registered at effectively 0. She had woken without external intervention, fully restored, and her first concern had been the calibration status of the coffee machine. The report was flagged by 3 separate review tiers. Each of them asked the same question in different words. Was I certain she had been asleep and not unconscious? I wrote the same answer each time. I am certain. She was asleep. She chose to be asleep. Her body executed it with a precision our finest sedation pharmacology cannot match, and she had been asleep through the alarm because the alarm to her nervous system was simply not a reason not to be. We updated her file. It now has 104 entries.